Silksong is, at its core, a story of motherhood. This fact isn't hidden by any means. It is clear from the very first boss of the game, Moss Mother. It attacks us to protect its eggs, and its hunter's journal entry almost reads as a thesis statement for the entire story. Motherhood is an instinct that can push creatures beyond what seems their normal limits. It turns even weaker beasts into formidable foes. It feels like half of the bosses in this game are mothers, and the relationships that have shaped the entire kingdom of Pharloom are those between Grandmother Silk and her children. Even Hornet's own character arc revolves around her upbringing as a child of 3 queens. If Hollow Knight's lore is centered around the relationship between a father and his son, and how this connection doomed an entire kingdom, then Silksong is its mirror, making it impossible to fully appreciate its themes and story without considering what it has to say about motherhood. This video will be split into 3 sections, each one exploring the ideas encapsulated by one of Hornet's 3 mothers through the storylines of various characters found within Pharloom, culminating with Silksong's central conflict between Hornet, Lace, and Grandmother Silk. We'll also be diving into the real-world biology behind parental investment that inspired some of the characters in Pharloom, which will make you very, very glad you're not an insect. Exploring the lore of Silksong's many, many mothers will reveal how parent-offspring connections act as the driving force behind this narrative, shaping both this world and those who inhabit it, for better or for worse. Before we begin, I just want to say a huge thank you for all the support I've been receiving on my recent Silksong videos. I was initially nervous to branch out from Elden Ring, so it's been amazing and humbling to see a response like this. If you're new to the channel and have been enjoying the content, consider subscribing as it really helps me out. Thanks again, now back to the video. Deep within the putrefied ducts of the Citadel, we find Huntress. Hornet's first meeting with her is a standoff, 2 formidable hunters who can sense each other's skill. But eventually they agree to a truce so they both might walk away from the exchange. She enjoys killing, but claims only to do so to feed herself and her brood to come, a massive clutch of eggs she is watching over. She asks Hornet if she would willingly give up her own organs, definitely a normal thing to ask somebody you just met, but in return for a reward she instead agrees to bring her a huge bounty of organs from the bugs of Pharloom, prepared through the use of various tools. After returning to her, it's revealed that the reason she requires such a massive amount of meat is so her newly hatched children feed upon the flesh of others instead of her own. This behavior is called matrophagy, and it is practiced by a number of species of spiders and insects. In some cases, if a mother cannot produce enough food for her offspring, they will instead feed upon her, which leads to larger offspring body size and increased survival rates. While both fathers and mothers certainly make sacrifices for their children, Huntress shows us the physical toll mothers must suffer to create and nourish their children, and that these sacrifices often are taken for granted, even being expected of them. In this world, a mother prioritizing the health of her children over her own life is all too common. If we fail to complete this wish before Act 3, Huntress will be consumed by her brood, who grow large enough to venture off on their own, save for the runt of the litter, who failed to eat any of his mother. Hornet notes that it was a common fate which found her, perhaps too common. Huntress isn't surprised Hornet recognizes the true reason for her wish, specifically because she is a spider. It seems like just like the real world, the spiders of Hollow Knight also often partake in matrophagy. Hornet is the child of Herra the Beast, who, as Hornet puts it, is one like Huntress, a powerful, bestial hunter. Hornet has seen this many times before. Her offspring will be born hungry, with sharp tooth and claw. In their birth craze, Huntress's own meat would delight as much as another bug's. This feast is a distraction. It's easy to forget with how compassionate and well-spoken Hornet is that she was born in Deepnest, and she evidently witnessed some traumatizing things down there. Huntress then asks Hornet if she views her wish as shameful, the wish of a mother who wouldn't sacrifice herself for her own children, one who wishes to watch them grow and learn. She responds, "Your choice is your own, tall mother. You won't be judged by me. I've seen enough sacrifice. I've no love for the act." This finally brings us to the first theme of the video, that associated with Herra the Beast, sacrifice. Huntress's storyline is one of the only points at which Hornet references her birth mother, and childhood in Deepnest, and it is because it is meant to parallel Herra's own conflict. As a refresher, Herra was the Queen of Deepnest, one of the few regions in Hallownest not to submit to the Pale King's rule. When the Radiance's infection first began to spread, the Pale King asked her to become one of the Three Dreamers, a group of powerful beings who would enter into an eternal slumber to seal the Hollow Knight and the infection within the Temple of the Black Egg. She agreed only on the condition that the Pale King would have a child with her, and this child was Hornet. We learn from the White Lady that Hornet is a striking reflection of her mother, though the two were permitted little time together. Despite this, Hornet was pained by her mother's death, and notes that while we do not choose our mothers or the circumstances into which we are born, she is grateful for the life she was granted. She believes this debt can only be paid by taking the burden of the future in her stead. While she is referring to Hallownest here, this statement could just as easily apply to the future of Pharloom. It is also here, as a child, that the other weavers attempted to groom Hornet into becoming their savior, the one who could defeat the Grandmother and take her place, essentially the Weaver Queen ending. The flaw in the Weaver's reasoning is selfishness. They don't want to break this cycle of divine power and oppression, they simply desire one of their own as a god. But Herra is different from the other weavers, not just in her personal goals, but in her form as well. While all the other spiders born of Grandmother Silk resemble one another, with thin black bodies and large round masks, Herra has a small mask with 2 horns, and a much larger grey body. I've seen a theory that unlike the other weavers, who were originally the common Farlids until Grandmother Silk infused them with her silk, that Herra was instead created from a similar creature, the Drape Mite. I do see the similarity. They both have similar cloth hoods and curved horns underneath, and a segmented grey body. Both mites and Farlids are arachnids, and in this world spider seems to be less of a species and more of a term used for bugs that can generate silk due to their ascension through the Grandmother, so it's certainly possible, but I'll leave that up to you. What is clear is that Herra has different desires for Hornet than her kin. Like Huntress sacrificing her future and flesh so her young might survive, Herra sacrifices her relationship with her daughter, agreeing to give up her own body both in hopes of saving the kingdom and so Hornet can be born. The tragedy of this can be seen clearly in the red memory. Hornet can barely recall her own mother's face as it shifts and blurs out of focus, but she does remember her words. Ignore them, daughter, they're whispers. Greater, grander, weaver, guardian, queen. Those are their desires, not your own. Certainly not mine. Only if you resist them, you might see it, another hope beyond. But to recall these words, in time so far, will you even remember me, child? Could you? A mother before the mask, before I lay forever in duty. Motherhood is a sacrifice, and Herra was willing to lose everything so her daughter would live. Her dream nail dialogue reads, bound, for brood, for child, fair bargain made, give all, for her, for her, for her. This is a world which all too often requires mothers to sacrifice themselves for their children, but perhaps it does not need to be this way. Our next topic focuses on what Herra was forced to give up, experiencing your child's development and growth, nurturing, teaching, and training them. Instead, this role was played by Queen Vespa, the ruler of a vast hive at the edge of Hallownest. Of Hornet's 3 mothers, we spend the least time with Vespa, but the lessons she shares are still fundamental to the story's themes. She trains Hornet to survive in this harsh world, as we see in the red memory. Good, better, yet you still need to be faster. Vespa pushes her beyond her limits because she knows enough of her past to understand what is coming for her. In time, they will come for you, those who fear your nature, and those seeking to claim it. The obvious parallel to Vespa and Pharloom is Skarrsinger Karmelita, the monarch of the ant tribe. Both lead colonies of eusocial insects, bees and ants, respectively. For those interested, the real-life biology of eusocial insects is actually super cool. In short, due to a quirk of genetics, worker insects are actually more related to their siblings, the queen's other offspring, than they would be to their own progeny. And so they evolved around protecting and providing for their queen and her children instead of themselves. This is what allows for a single species to produce massively different sized and shaped individuals with different purposes, each of which contributes to the colony's success. In Silksong, we see this through the various different forms the ant tribe takes, as well as their Neelan dialogue, which centers around serving their queen. Both the hive and the scar have a similar fate, with their leaders growing old, becoming much larger but losing the strength of their youth, which allows for the infection and the haunting to seep into their domain. But in their day, both Karmelita and Vespa were powerful warriors who imparted their skill and culture upon all of their children. The Song Queen of the Scar is also their most talented warrior. Wielding twin curved sickles and bone spines, Hornet notes that this graceful ruler once possessed skill to rival her own. Best boss in the game, by the way. She even sings her own boss theme while kicking your ass. I love that. Karmelita's voice united all of the Scar in her service, and she molded them into warriors. I think everyone who wandered into the Hunter's March at the start of the game can attest to the Scar's skill and power, and it is their mother's love which gave them this strength. My children, I saw you glorious. For you, my children, I sing. At her youthful peak, Karmelita and her tribe were one of the few strong enough to resist the Citadel's expansion, and she is the only one of the 3 ancient hearts to survive into the modern age when Hornet explores Pharloom. I believe it is the power of Karmelita's song which gives the Scar the strength to resist the haunting for so long. The needle in dialogue for the Scar states, "Is this still her song? The caves call, we listen. No nest, no home, all for the singer. Strength from her, strength for her." The clear implication is that it is only after Karmelita's voice faded with age that the Scar were left open to the grandmother's own silken song. But even while haunted, they seem to have kept more of themselves and searched for her voice. A powerful voice indeed to rival a god's. In a similar manner, the Hunter's Journal describes the Hive Warriors as savage and dedicated reflections of their mother, but they too fell to the song of a higher being after their mother passed away. Interestingly, unlike the other monarchs of Hallownest, Vespa has no interest in stopping the infection, her ghost stating, "Though this hive exists within Hallownest, we play no part in its attempt at perpetuation. To rail against nature is folly, all things must accept an end." She's not trying to change the world, she accepts it as it is. As Vespa says to Hornet, "To survive our world, you must learn to sting, swift and sudden. It is kill or be killed in these lands, and so a mother must teach her children how to survive it." And this is important, but there is another mentor which acts as a mother figure in these lands which highlights an even more important lesson of strength. That being Chakra's master, whose path she follows all throughout Pharloom. Through her journey, Chakra comes to realize her master's winding path is her final lesson, allowing her to witness the kingdom's dignity. Chakra's tribe held strength and combat above all else, and because of this she initially views the pilgrims as careless and weak, destined to die. But throughout her journey she begins to see a subtle strength in them. At journey's end she finds her master, fallen from old age. She reveals that while she called her master, she was a mother just as much, even more than the bug who bore her. Chakra's story mirrors Hornet's own development, and it is no surprise that this wish must be completed before Hornet can reach Act 3. As this land crumbles, and the void comes for those left alive, both Chakra and Hornet use the strength granted by their mentors to defend those weaker than them. The final lessons of these mothers is not just how to survive, but how to protect. Grandmother Silk created the weavers to worship her. She called them daughters, she called them divine, she lied. And so, they betrayed her, passing their burden of service through song to the simple bugs of the land, and secretly altering this music to lull her to sleep, so they could rule in her place. And this cycle is central to the game's themes. The system the weavers originally created wasn't the rampant inequality we can observe in the modern citadel, evidenced by the hidden statue of Pious Ismor, which preaches of a citadel made from bare, unadorned stone, and that excess is a sin which would compromise the purity of the citadel's song. Even so, they still set the evils we witness here into motion, and their real goal was always to overthrow Grandmother Silk and subjugate the land of Pharloom themselves. Silk used the weavers, she enslaved them, and like any child, they learned from their mother. desiring to do the same to others, to be worshipped, to be served. A desire shared, in part, by Hornet. The caretaker recognizes this impulse, asking if Hornet plans to usurp, to perch above them as queen. Such is the way of weavers and gods both. And you can choose this path. In fact, it is the default ending. And this fact is a huge part of the narrative itself. It requires great effort to change an entire system, to fight against Hornet's own nature as a pale being and as a weaver. It is easy to think that identity is shaped by big choices, but it is the small sacrifices throughout Hornet's journey that allow her to see this path. The entire wish system is designed around this. At the start of the game, she agrees to grant wishes solely because they might offer her a reward or advantage in her fight against the Citadel. If it so happens to help the pilgrims as well, that's great, but she ultimately does it for herself. If you continue to play the game this way, only completing those wishes with useful rewards, you are essentially feeding Hornet's desire for dominance, and so the only option available to you is to accept Hornet's nature and become a monarch, an oppressor. But there comes a point where wishes stop granting rewards, and only ask you to help without offering anything in return. Many of these wishes are tedious fetch quests, make you farm for items, or require you to give up the rosaries that might instead be spent on a powerful new tool, and I believe this is by design. These quests are supposed to be less fun, because helping those in need isn't always fun. You must consistently make these small sacrifices, improving the lives of these simple pilgrims, the fleas, those weaker than herself, to overcome Hornet's nature of dominance. Choosing a new identity, breaking the cycle of oppression, requires more effort than simply accepting the current order does. This is spelt out clearly at the beginning of the most important wish in the game, Silk and Soul. The caretaker, a shaman, asks us if we're ready to finally face Silk and claim her place. Hornet responds that dominance seems to be baked deep in her blood, just as it is in the grandmother's. But another part of her resists, a part which over time she finds herself siding with more and more. A wish not to become a monarch, but to regain her freedom and unshackle Pharloom and its people from their pale chains, permanently. A world cut free. This path only becomes available because Hornet has chosen to help those weaker than her. An identity she has chosen overtaking that which she was born into. You've still got the monarch in you, alright, and the glare of a weaver, but that ambition, that's wild different from both. And so we, with the help of the other snail shamans, set the snare which would allow us to kill the monarch without binding her soul and defeat her. But at the final moment, as the void tendrils drag her into the abyss, she uses the last of her strength to pull us down with her. But then Lace cuts off her arm and drives both mother and daughter into the darkness. And so begins Act 3, the final conflict of our story. Lace was created after the haunting as a response to the Weaver's rebellion, a daughter woven entirely from silk, entirely dependent on her mother. Cursed to a permanent childhood, she despises her, but also desperately yearns for her approval. Her needle in dialogue states, "See me, your knight, see me, your daughter, I will not fade." She attempts to kill Hornet despite her creator, yes, but also because she is jealous. And that is because she was made this way in the form of a child. After all, it's you that she wants, is it not? The dialogue of the final Silk Heart states, "Better a child spun mad than none. Better a child spun frail than none. Better a child spun pure than them. One to wish our waking, from our silk, a child born loyal." This loyalty is equal parts nature and survival. We see what happens if Lace's mother were to abandon her through Phantom, her sister. Sent to watch over the exhaust organ, she has become gray and frayed, only wishing for a swift end through combat over a slow, wasting death. Grandmother Silk does love Lace in a twisted way, but her need for control is so great that she refused to let Lace grow into her own individual, separate from herself. Even so, this love is what pushes the grandmother to fight the void, creating a cocoon of silk around herself and Lace, desperately trying to keep her last daughter alive. This unseen battle in the darkness can be felt throughout all of Pharloom, the void and silk shaking the bedrock of the land and allowing the void to infest all those who are affected by the haunting. Lace believes she is enacting revenge on her mother, but even in her rebellion, she's accepting the identity forced upon her, a selfish and spiteful child, happy to doom the kingdom if her mother goes with it. And the reason she does this, and why she is a perfect foil to Hornet, is because her mother never gave her the last and most important gift: hope. My personal favorite line in the game comes when the situation is at its most dire. The entire kingdom is falling, and Hornet discovers that Lace and Grandmother Silk have sunk deep within the void, unreachable. By all means, this is an impossible situation. Lace tells her to rejoice and let it all come down, but Hornet simply replies, "I will not. I have stood sentinel for one dying land. That role I will never play again." This line, followed by an epic climb out of an active volcano, out of the metaphorical belly of the whale, signifying the death of Hornet's old self, and her rebirth into a true hero over the slowly building rendition of Enter Pharloom, makes this one of the most amazing moments in the entire game. All the pain she has witnessed in Hollow Nest, the Pale King's doomed plan, the failure of the Hollow Knight, the sacrifices of the vessels, and the slow spread of the infection. All of this pain allowed Hornet to understand the desire of her final mother, the one who raised her, the White Lady. Alas, Spider's child, for our ways you will think us harsh, you will think us uncaring, unrepentant, and so we must seem, for that is the cost of our wish. You are wrong, lady. I knew the wish, and the price to achieve it, and now, across these many ages, I have only come to know it better. Strength, in mind, in care, in claw. Strength enough that I may live to see a world better than our own, or to craft a world as I desire. That was the wish, of my mother, of my mentor, and of you. This final aspect of motherhood is what truly set Hornet and Lace apart. The gift that the White Lady gave and Grandmother Silk withheld. Hope for the future, giving a child everything they need to thrive and become their own individual, and letting them go in the process. Lace's identity begins and ends with her mother, because Silk never wanted her to be anything but a child, a daughter. This weak, wasting existence, this was not life, just a husk shaped to act like a child. Yours was life, Pale One. Do not confuse your unique creation with its absence. I have seen others make the same mistake. It is Hornet's mothers, within the red memory, that give her the strength to save Pharloom. Their sacrifice, their training, their hope. Hornet wrests the Everbloom, the first light and only weapon against the void, from her memory. The White Lady's final words pushing her onwards. Burn yourself free from our sad fate. With this power, we descend into the Lake of Void. Below waits an almost biblical scene. Grandmother Silk crucified against the wall of her failing silk cocoon, and her daughter consumed by the void. Lost Lace. This long, drawn-out battle is certainly the most difficult challenge Hornet faces on her journey, but eventually, as the void threatens to break through the cocoon entirely, Hornet frees Lace from the darkness and looks to the Grandmother. And in this moment, Silk finally realizes what kind of mother she needs to be. She sacrifices herself, giving the last of her silken strength to empower Hornet so she can break through the sea of void, saving her daughter. Finally letting go of her need for control and allowing Lace to find her own path. Hoping and trusting that she will live to see a better world. And she does, with just a little more help from Hornet's past. The story comes full circle. Thanks for watching. This more character-focused format was a bit of an experiment, so if you liked the video, consider leaving a like, comment, or subscribing. And as always, I hope to see you next time.